I woke up again on the bed from the room by the wine cellar, but as I opened my eyes, I found that I was somewhere new. The sky appeared to be a surreal royal blue paste, as if it were ink floating over my head. There were what appeared to be trees in a circle around me, but they were also very unlike trees. Their branches looked like the arms of candelabras, and their trunks had more the appearance of paper than bark. They were white, with only a few fibers visible in them. The golden branches, however, were what drew my attention, and as I looked up to the tops of the strange trees, the lights on top of the candles alit. The ground around me appeared to be made out of torn up bits of paper, and the grass out of thin, wiry pens and pencils that appeared to be actually growing out of the ground. As I swung my legs out of the bed and began to stand, I saw before me the bottle of wine and its label, "Abea para a pessoa que não va a viva." Picking it up and reading the rustic words once more, I began to wonder, and decided that this was a lucid dream caused by excessive wine drinking. Not feeling too worried, I began to open the bottle, when all of a sudden, someone shouted at me, "Hey, stop! Not yet!" I froze and asked, "Who said that?" out loud in hopes of finding someone or something to answer. "I did," said a voice emanating from the ground. "Me, the prairie dog." "Why can't I see you?" I asked in befuddlement. "Oh, of course you can. You're just not thinking. Or worse, maybe you're thinking too much. They're both problems here. But if you can see the trees, then it only makes sense that you can see me too, right?" As I heard this explanation, I suddenly saw him before me, a little prairie dog standing on the ground with a frightened look on his face. His big eyes appeared to be almost completely brown, and he stood in a slouching position, wringing his hands almost nervously. I watched his light brown fur shiver once or twice and asked, "Who are you?" "Me? Why, I'm just like you. I'm a bit scared right now, though. I'm not in one of my holes, and for that reason, I only have time for 2 punctuation marks. Can't you hear it? 2 exclamation points, 2 question marks. I never use 2 periods, though. It would be a waste. Don't you think? Normally, however, I use 3 when I talk. But anyways, don't drink that wine. Just save it and bring it along with you. It's a large bottle, though. How will I ever hold on to it? Just put it in your small pocket." "My small pocket?" "Oh, there you go. You did it too. You used 2 question marks. Very good. Now, your small pocket is the one that you put things in when they're too big to carry around at normal size. You know, your small pocket. It's on the side of your head. Most people have 2. Just like question marks when you're in a rush." Thinking that he must have been talking about my ears, I began to move the bottle of wine towards my right ear, assuming once more that this was a lucid dream. I could feel the cool glass bottle in my hand, and tried to make it seem less real to myself, partially wanting whatever I was experiencing to go away. I was delighted to find, however, that as soon as the top of the bottle touched my ear, with the cork somewhat pushed in, it slowly began to shrink, and soon it simply disappeared and turned into a thought inside my mind. I could sense it. Very good," said the prairie dog. Now we must get going, or else we'll never find the key." What is the key? I thought, knowing where this part of my dream had come from. Why, the key is the key that sets us free. When you find the key, you will use it to purge Streel of the Freel, because right now the Freel is growing, and quite soon it will be a Freel. What? You just said the same word twice. No, not hardly. Didn't you hear? The second time the F was capitalized. That's because the Freel is growing and becoming something quite different, which is that it is becoming a Freel, and a Freel is something to be feared in a manner entirely different from a Freel, because a Freel has a much bigger, well, you see, a Freel is different in that it's just much more dangerous. Let's leave it at that. So, as you can see, we have no time to lose and no time to waste on commas or punctuation marks. We must keep moving on and talking in a very rapid fashion, or else the Freel will transform and destroy everything. "You're a very weird prairie dog," I commented, feeling that my statement was well justified. No, I'm not. You, my young friend, are a strange prairie dog. I am tangled in a seamless sheet, and much like a seamless sheet, I am seemingly without a seam, and therefore I fit well in or on a bed, which is where I'd like to be right now. And perhaps I am there and here both at the same time, but just don't know it. Just don't know it due to lack of perspective. I am, after all, not artistically inclined. We came to a dense wood, and staring into it, I felt a shiver. "What are we supposed to do now?" I asked the prairie dog. Well, I must find a hole so that I can return to my old way of punctuating sentences when I speak. You, however, must find the key, whatever that may involve or require of you. Got it? Yes, but the prairie dog was already digging into the ground, forming a hole, and a moment later he was altogether gone, leaving behind only a pile of dirt where he had dug a hole in the ground. I took a few steps towards the woods, and heard an abrupt sound that I could not describe as anything but a horn. As I looked for the source of the sound, I soon found a small creature with the most bizarre attributes I had ever seen. It had a human-shaped head, but much more severely colored skin that looked something like the color of an orange carrot, but with streaks of black through it. Its nose was not only upside down, but what's more, above its eyes, which gave its eyes a lack of emotion, as it stood with its vertical mouth shut. It stood on all fours like an ape, hunched over in a primal stance, and after a minute of looking at it, I heard the ground behind me rustle. "He's our host," said the prairie dog, bursting out of the ground. "Follow him." Ah, it sounds so nice now that I have all my punctuation again. The strange creature began to walk deeper and deeper into the woods, until we came to what appeared to be a cabin of some sort, made out of the strange white trees with candelabra arms. The chimney, in fact, was made out of a candelabra arm, and my eyes locked onto it until I entered the house. "Now," said the prairie dog, "I am afraid we must wait for the left-handed scribe, as I know he has many things to tell you, or perhaps scribble to you, or write to you, or however he chooses to communicate nowadays. But the point is that I'm sure he'll want to see you, because clearly finding the key is what you came to do. Well, not just that, of course. You also came to take care of the Freel, and I know that because you came to Streel from Greel, which makes you quite important as far as outsiders go, because we haven't had many outsiders in quite a long while." With the prairie dog's final word, the door began to rattle, and it opened to reveal a man whose strangeness I could not quite figure out for a moment. He appeared to be normal for the most part, but looking at him, it seemed that there was something odd. His face was that of a slender man with far too much on his mind and far too little in front of him to think about. He had a clean-shaven face, and his hair sat relatively flat, cut fairly close to his head on all sides. He wore a long-sleeved, button-up shirt with vertical blue stripes, and focusing on all in the room, began to speak. "I'm glad to see you all here," he said in a voice that shifted tones as he spoke from high to low and then back to high. "Now who's this?" said the man as he held both palms face up, pointing towards me, but without looking at me. "This is the boy who's come to find the key," exclaimed the prairie dog. "Am I?" I asked in hopes of negating the whole issue and being able to wake up or go home. "Do I have two left arms?" asked the newly entered man. "Well, of course I do. So you're here to find the key, and that's settled. You see, if you offset one question with another and somehow try to make the questions equal, you can make anything true. Something similar is true of reading a book while standing on your head. If the words are upside down and you can't read them, then you can decide that they mean whatever you like. After all, your perspective is just as important as the book and the author's perspectives, is it not? I mean, just because the author wanted you to understand one thing doesn't mean that you can't understand another, or else we never discover anything, and that's why I'm a dog. And we understand you as a hero." Starting to understand the logic of my own dream, but confused by the man's reference to himself as a dog, I responded, "But if your understanding of me makes me who I am, then my understanding of you should equally make you who you are. Therefore, I choose to understand you as a fish." Nothing happened. "You cannot always choose to understand. Most of the time you can only choose to believe, which is an entirely different matter from understanding, because understanding takes reason while belief takes courage. So let me set you on your path and tell you what is to happen today, and maybe tomorrow, and maybe for a million more tomorrows than you'll stay here to see. The Freel is the ferocious winged slabberjank that has cut leaves from the tree of sensibility, love, and courage. We can put the leaves back, but if the Freel is let to run free, it will cut the leaves down again. Therefore, we need you to strike down the Freel before it becomes a Freel, and we have a whole new problem on our hands. Got it?" "Oh," began the prairie dog, speaking to the man, "you use such beautiful quadruple punctuation." "First of all," I began, almost laughing now, "who are you all? And second of all, I don't have enough time to go find the key and strike down some creature before I wake up." The scribe suddenly looked deeply into my eyes with an expression of aspirative terror, and said, "Oh, child, how mistaken you are! You must strike down the Freel." His thin face and meagre figure appeared as if they were suddenly wasting away behind his button-up shirt, and the pens in his chest pocket began to make noise. "If you do not, I am afraid that both I and my friend the prairie dog will have to eat you. It's not a cruel cannibalistic practice, of course, understand. It's just a matter of how the rules work. I do not want to eat you, nor does the prairie dog, nor Solrock. And by the way, Solrock was the creature that you met in the woods there, and I hope you can hear my most parenthetical statement. But those are the rules of this land of Streel, and we have vowed to abide by them as law-abiding citizens that abide to avoid the forebode. Do you understand?" "All right, I'll take your quest. What do I need to do?" "Oh, very good. You used 2 punctuation marks. 2 question marks. That was quite an improvement. Now, what you must do is follow the prairie dog, and from now on you can call him Clyper. That's his name. Follow Clyper to Mount Hormig, where you will get a shreed, which of course you must plant and grow. Then you must find a map, but of course not just any map, the world's greatest map. In this map you will find a book. Well, more like an atlas, really. But yes, an atlas. In the map that leads to page 5, which is where your journey officially begins. For you see, after page 5 comes page 6, which leads to a few other subsequential pages and articles about what to do if you're still on a page and not actually existing and living while standing on the ground. It's a very confusing book, but it's absolutely splendid, and when you figure it out, you may just find your way to the Klee, at which time you'll no longer be bound by the rules of the kingdom, but rather to the rules of a knight inside of his own mind. At that point, you'll be free to strike down the Freel. Got it?" "Yeah, sure," I said with a smug smirk, trying to will myself to consciousness. Looking down at the prairie dog, I said, "Let's go. Lead me to Mount Hormig," with a fake sense of heroism in my voice. "All right, your choice. Well, not really." We exited the cabin and began to march through the woods, through the white trees, and as we went, the darkness in the sky deepened to the point where the sky became the color of steel. We soon came to a clearing, and Clyper began to speak. "Well, there it is, Mount Hormig." "Where?" I asked, looking into the empty space of the clearing. "Well, it's right there, right in front of you." "I don't see anything. It's just a clearing." "Here," said Clyper, sounding exasperated. "Lean down here and let me whisper something in your ear." I began to lower my ear, and as I did, I began to fall away into obscurity, becoming no bigger than Clyper himself. My clothes themselves became a maze in which I found myself lost, and struggling to get to the neck-hole. I screamed, "What did you do to me?" "Nothing that you didn't want to happen, I hope," said Clyper. But it's good to see that you're still using double punctuation. That's a good sign. Anyway, I shrunk you down so that you could see the mountain, but you're nowhere near small enough yet." Just then, Clyper grabbed my hand, pulled me out of the maze of my clothes, and holding onto my palm, we continued to shrink until we were smaller than ants. I stood, feeling somewhat embarrassed by my nudity, but seeing as how I was probably invisible to the rest of the world, I turned my attention back to Clyper as he began to speak. "Now look into the clearing and tell me that you don't see a mountain." I looked, and upon seeing what was there, I shouted in protest, "That's no mountain. That's an anthill." "Still double. Very good. Now, that's not just an anthill, that's an anthill, with capital letters, and everyone knows that an anthill with capital letters looks, sounds, feels, and is very different because, for one thing, they contain shreeds. Shreeds, of course, being the source of sword trees, and sword trees, of course, being necessary to get the right kind of sword in order to get to the Klee. Am I making myself clear?" "Sure," I said, clueless. "Let's just get this over with."